วัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ Welcome to NBT World's The Fireside. I'm Benjamin Ruchopagan.
And I'm Warisa Nidanat Gomon. Every week we have a fireside chat exploring what's going on in Thailand, diving deep into our latest obsessions.
Now, so far we've been exploring the legacy of Her Majesty Queen Sirikit, the Queen Mother, and we've been looking extensively at how her work has been shaping Thai culture, traditional craftsmanship, strengthening different livelihoods in the rural areas of Thailand, and expanding public health. Now, today we're going to focus on another dimension of her legacy, one that touches their lives at the most formative stage. That's right, we're talking about children. So, what makes this topic so interesting?
Well, it's that Queen Sirikit's impact on children didn't come from a single program or policy, but instead it emerged through a network of institutions, scholarships, healthcare systems, and community initiatives that continue to shape childhood in Thailand even today. Now, some of these were designed specifically for children. Others focused on families, education, or livelihoods, but had profound effects on how children grow, learn, and thrive. And in this episode, we'll explore how royal patronage helped build a safety net around Thai childhood, from hospitals and classrooms to community spaces and humanitarian care. Shall we begin?
Yes, let's get right to it. So, if there's one institution that really best represents Queen Sirikit's direct and lasting impact on child well-being, it has to be the Queen Sirikit National Institute of Child Health, which is often referred to as the QSNICH. It's a pretty long acronym or abbreviation, but yes, the QSNICH, which actually came up in a previous episode that we did on public health. So this institute is one of Thailand's primary pediatric hospitals, and it's a national center for child health and medical research. It was originally known as the Children's Hospital, and in 1996 it was renamed in honor of Queen Sirikit, recognizing her long-standing commitment to child health and child welfare.
Yes, and today the Institute provides comprehensive pediatric care. It serves children from all across Thailand, all across the country, and it offers both inpatient and also outpatient services, along with specialized treatments for complex childhood conditions and also for families, especially those facing serious or rare illnesses. QSNICH becomes a place of long-term care and hope. Now, what makes this institution especially significant is not just the medical treatment itself, but the philosophy behind it. Now, the Institute reflects an understanding that children's health is not isolated from their development, education, or emotional well-being. Treating a child means thinking about their future in kind of a holistic kind of way.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, health is really foundational, right? So, if children don't have their health, it really holds them back in so many other ways, and it gives them just a bad start, you know. But QSNICH, that's going to be a rough acronym. That idea will come up again and again throughout this episode, I think, whether through hospitals, schools, or community programs. Queen Sirikit's legacy shows a really consistent belief that caring for children means supporting the whole environment around them, wherever they go. You know, whatever interfaces with children, you can feel her presence there. So, yeah, I think it must be very difficult to raise a child without the safety net, the social, benefits that we have here in Thailand. I mean, I can't imagine, like, if your kid is sick and you can't afford to take them to the hospital, how rough that must be, so we're very lucky here. One thing that often gets overlooked, I think, when we talk about pediatric healthcare is what happens to the child's life outside of the hospital bed. Now, when a child is sick for a long time, that impact goes beyond physical. It affects their schooling, it affects their social development and emotional well-being. And this is where a QSNICH takes a more holistic approach. Now, beyond medical treatment, the Institute works with educational programs that ensure that children who do need that long-term care can continue learning while receiving that care. If they have to go into the hospital over and over and over again, there are ways for them to maintain their education.
Right. That's very very forward-thinking. And these hospital-based learning spaces allow young patients to stay connected to education during treatment. For children and families, this continuity matters. It reduces anxiety, maintains routine, and helps children return to school more smoothly once they recover. Now, what's important here is the idea behind it. Health and education are not treated as separate worlds. The hospital recognizes that a child's development does not pause simply because they're ill. Now, care has to support both recovery and growth at the same time. This is something that is really important, like you said. It's not, I'm happy that they're not looking at it as an isolated case that, okay, they're just treating the symptoms, but they're looking far beyond just the symptoms and how it's gonna impact their future, and they go all the way into education, and it'll, reducing anxiety. I can really relate with that, because when you're behind your peers and you feel like you're not catching up with them, you probably feel like it does your mental, a little bit.
It's so consequential when you don't have the same. When you're a kid and you, even if you're like one semester behind, you feel like, oh my gosh, that's it. That's the end of my life. I remember when you're a kid, you feel like, oh my gosh, if I failed this one class and if I get held back 1 year, in the grand scheme of things, you feel like it doesn't matter. Like as an adult, whether you're ahead or behind, it kind of doesn't matter. But when you're a kid, that's a lot of anxiety. Like,
yes.
oh, I don't want to lose. I don't want to get left behind and, not move forward with my friends. I don't want to graduate at some odd age, So I can see why this is really important. And I do like that. It's really poignant what you said is they aren't separate worlds. Your health and your education and living life itself, like it's not separate. Like you can't compartmentalize these things. Just because you go to school at a certain time doesn't mean that the rest of this stops mattering, So yeah, it really looks at the, childhood itself, in my opinion. So healthcare is really just one side of the story. Another major barrier for many children, especially in the past, was access to education, like we said. For families with limited income, continuing schooling beyond the basics was usually impossible. And even we see some of this problem now, to be honest. This is not something that just disappeared. That reality has led to the establishment of the Foundation for Needy Students, which was created under Queen Sirikit's royal patronage in the early 1960s, all really far back. So the foundation was set up specifically to support students who had the ability and motivation to learn. They had to have the willingness, they had to want to be there, but not necessarily the financial means to continue their education.
And what's great is that the foundation provides scholarships and financial assistance that allows students to pursue education based on need rather than family income. The support can extend through secondary and even tertiary education, helping young people build skills and independence over the long term. And what really stands out is the philosophy behind the program. Education was seen as beyond just an individual advancement, but also as national development. By helping children stay in school, the foundation aimed to break cycles of poverty and expand opportunity across generations.
Yeah, I think in that sense, the Foundation for Needy Students functions as a kind of child welfare infrastructure, It doesn't really operate just as like emergency aid where like these are isolated incidents. This has quietly changed the trajectory of people's lives, I think, by making education possible when it otherwise wouldn't be, right? Now, taken together with other institutions like the QSNICH, this shows how Queen Sirikit's work had been addressing children's needs at different stages, right? Health is where they're vulnerable, education is when they're growing, and support systems that help them move forward with dignity,
So far we've talked about institutions that work directly with children, but some of Queen Sirikit's most far-reaching impact on young people came through programs that focused on families and livelihoods. One of the most important of these is the Support Foundation, which we mentioned many times previously, which we've talked about. And established under her royal patronage is in 1976. The support was designed to help rural families, especially women, earn supplementary income through traditional crafts such as weaving, embroidery, basketry, and woodwork. The program focused on skills training, quality control, and market access, allowing households to earn income without leaving their communities.
That's right. I mean, we often talk about it as a totally separate, not really gender specific program, and it's not necessarily meant to be, for one gender or the other, but it did support women a lot. Women who couldn't necessarily leave the home, who had to take care of kids, who were the primary caregiver. If they had I think it was a famous quote of hers, like, hey, if you have some time, then maybe you should do a little weaving on the side. And that really spawned this whole program. This really spawned this whole movement, that revitalized weaving. So support is not necessarily child focused on paper, but the effects on children are significant through these kinds of, second order effects. When families have stable income, children are more likely to stay in school, and, they're not going to get pulled into the factory. They're not going to get pulled into the field, to do labor. And they'll have adequate nutrition when they can afford it, and they'll grow up in more secure environments. What's important to emphasize is that this wasn't a short-term thing. Support creates a long-term skill pathways. Training centers became places where knowledge was passed down across the different generations.
And also in many communities, children grew up seeing craftsmanship as actual viable work. Now that exposure shapes aspirations. It links culture, livelihood, and family stability in ways that they directly affect childhood outcomes, even if children themselves are not the program's primary participants.
Now, not all learning happens in schools or hospitals. Queen Sirikit also recognized the importance of informal learning spaces. And this is especially important in cities where families don't necessarily have access to creative or educational environments outside the school. Now, one example of this that she helped to address was the Children's Discovery Museum, Bangkok. That's located in Queen Sirikit Park as well. Queen Sirikit Park, amazing park. We've already talked about this before.
And it was developed in the early 2000s, and the museum was created as an interactive learning space for children, particularly those between early childhood and pre-teen years. Now, instead of focusing on lectures or textbooks, it emphasizes exploration, play, creativity, and hands-on discovery. The idea is simple but powerful. The children learn best when curiosity is encouraged. The museum offers workshops and exhibits that introduce science, art, culture, and everyday problem solving in ways that feel accessible and fun. My mom, she has this philosophy of she doesn't want to, if only we children show interest in something, will she go in and make sure, for example, if I have an inclination, I like to sing, or I feel like she could kind of tell, okay, you have an interest in music. Only then will she push into, do you want to do guitar? Do you want to do piano? But she wouldn't just offer it, because she feels like only if the children is curious enough, they will pay attention and they will learn well. So
you can't force habits, or you can't force hobbies on kids.
It's very difficult. The kid... It's easy to put the kid in the classroom and lecture them, but if they don't have the curiosity to want to further educate themselves, it's not going to happen. So
even then, I feel like it's very difficult, because I took up so many instruments of my own curiosity. I tried piano, I tried saxophone, I tried guitar. I tried so many things, and none of them stuck. Right. But my parents were happy to oh, okay, well, if you want to try, then let's give it a shot. But yeah, it is very hard to it's important to feed that curiosity.
Yes.
But you can't really force kids to do things, because then they just shut down.
Yeah.
Right.
We're talking from personal experiences here, I think.
Additionally, for many families, especially those who don't have access to private enrichment programs, spaces like this become an entry point for lifelong learning. And it's about confidence, imagination, and the joy of discovery, this museum. So in the context of Queen Sirikit's broader legacy, the museum reflects a consistent belief that children thrive when learning is woven into daily life. You can try to schedule learning. You can try to force them to pay attention in classrooms. But sometimes when they have a passion for it, that's when real learning happens. You can't just confine it to formal institutions.
Very well said. But while urban institutions indeed play an important role, Queen Sirikit's impact on children is perhaps most profound in places far from major cities, actually. Now, in remote and highland areas, access to education was once extremely limited, especially for ethnic minority communities. Through royal patronage, schools were established or supported for hill tribe children in northern Thailand. One notable example is the Dao Me Luang School, which expanded access to formal education in areas where schooling had previously been inconsistent or unavailable.
Yeah, I really love this emphasis again. It's a real through line in her legacy, in my opinion, that she went where she was needed. She went into, rural provinces. She went into rural areas, and she never forgot, Thai people is everywhere in Thailand, not just the major cities. So I think that's what I think we see this consistently in all the different aspects of her legacy, from crafting, from, what have we talked about before? We've talked about public health. We've talked about even forestry and botany in places where there is an urgent need for nature conservation. So you can really see this dedication to rural Thailand, and that's why it's so great, across Thailand, wherever you go, it has great nature, and it's, disappearing to some degree, but it has, it's just life, wherever you are in the country, and I think that, if we have more sort of social supports and people are more confident about having kids, I think it could be the real key to reversing some of the population trends that we see in the country, because we have a problem with aging populations and things like that. It is a problem not just in Thailand, but I think it is something that without this sort of attention to children, you're not going to be able to support families, to prosper. If people aren't confident about having kids, as we can see, they're not having them, less and less. So in addition to, getting back to the subject at hand, in addition to the individual schools, Queen Sirikit also supported education initiatives that were connected to the Border Patrol Police. And this is very interesting because these schools, which later came under the Ministry of Education, that would make sense, to formalize it under the ministry, provided basic education up to lower secondary levels in remote border areas. Now, the significance of these efforts is long-term. Education access in the childhood shapes everything that follows. I believe that too. Literacy, opportunity, health outcomes, and economic mobility all begin whether a child can attend school in the first place. Not having the ability to attend school, it really narrows your opportunities. Everything is sort of, blocked off by did you graduate high school? Did you graduate college? Did you take a vocational, training course? Do you have a certification? And without all these things, without all these measures to recruit people and to narrow candidates, you can really get left behind. So this is really important stuff. So by addressing geographic and ethnic barriers directly, these initiatives help reduce the disparities that persisted for generations. There are places where, Thailand was prospering, Thai people were prospering, and there are other places that got totally left behind. So, there is still this problem today, in Thailand, and it's something that we really can't lose sight of as well. For many children, this represents the first step into formal education, the Zhao Me Luang schools, and a wider participation in Thai society as well.
And I love what you said about, these being in kind of rural areas. And it's true that, we see who we see, basically, but she really goes out of her way to make sure that she touches the lives of all the even ethnic minority people in rural areas, which I'm pretty sure even back in the day, it wasn't easy to get around, but she still, tried to find a way to help her people. And that's very admirable.
I think so too. I mean, there was an idea that like, well, these are the Thai people and these are the others, right? And in my opinion, like now, like that whole narrative has shifted. Like now everybody's like, oh no, you're Thai too. And this is just shows the diversity of, of the country, like, and we're leaning into the diversity of the country, but there was a time in Thailand's history where we really wanted to assert a common identity. There was a time when we really, wanted to formalize our borders, because of colonialism, where we had to like, okay, well, if you're demarcating it from here to here is your, colony or whatever, then from this border inwards is us. And what makes this Thailand? What makes these Thai people? And so there was a lot of efforts to nationalize culture. But culture is beautiful when it's different from place to place. And it's important that just because someone has a different culture that you don't exclude them from these social benefits, just to bring it back to this episode, right?
Yeah, that's true. And another pillar of Queen Sirikit's legacy for children and families is her longstanding leadership of the Thai Red Cross Society, where she serves as president, or she served rather. And under her guidance, the Thai Red Cross expanded its humanitarian role across maternal health, child welfare, emergency medicine, and disaster response. While its programs serve people of all ages, children and families are often among the primary beneficiaries.
That's right. So, the Thai Red Cross, we brought up, a lot of her work there before, but there was also that business of when a lot of Cambodian refugees were fleeing the Khmer Rouge, and they had to, they fled to Thailand. They fled across, into our borders, and instead of turning them away, I mean, where else are they going to go? Like a lot of them were orphans, as well. She started that institute, Ban Khao Lan, and in order to like as a refugee center and to give people and provide an orphanage, provide care, provide essential goods and supplies, and so she had a huge heart, and that was part of. This is all part of children. There were many children that were left over that in that refugee movement. So this is all part of like how big she, what a mother she was. She really was a mother first, to the nation, and the children that came into basically was her home. So and aside from, her support for past humanitarian efforts, including that one outstanding incident, the Thai Red Cross, of course, responds to natural disasters, strengthening maternal and child health services, and it's a critical safety net. They provide a lot of also like, disease screening as well. They're, that is really affordable, really accessible for people. So in moments of crisis, these are the systems that ensure that children have access to care, protection, and stability, which is when they need it most, is when you're a child, So what connects this work to Queen Sirikit's broader philosophy, I want to say, is the emphasis on dignity. We use this word a lot, but humanitarian assistance wasn't treated as a charity. It was treated as a responsibility that was rooted in compassion and shared humanity. We're all people. children were treated as individuals whose futures mattered, and they do. They're our future.
That's true. And so when we step back and take a look at the full picture, Queen Sirikit's impact on children in Thailand in many, many ways is not defined by a single institution or program. Instead, it appears through a network of care. Hospitals that treat children while supporting their development, scholarships that keep students in school, livelihood programs that stabilize families, schools that reach remote communities, and humanitarian systems that protect children during crisis. So every single step of the way of the growth of a human being, it's all covered.
Yeah, it's fantastic stuff. So even when these initiatives weren't designed exclusively for children, they do create the environments where children can grow with greater security, greater opportunity, and dignity, of course, most of all. That's why her legacy really continues to matter. These are the systems that are still operating today. These systems are still in need today. They still shape lives, and they remind us that investing in children means investing in the structures that surround them as well. You know, the museum, the hospital, you know, the school, all of these things matter, you know, and even really the primary caregiver, even, you know, she never lost sight of the connection between mother and child.
That's true. And now we turn it back to our audience. Have you ever encountered any of these institutions or programs back in your country, your life, or community?
Let us know in the comment section of NBT World's online channels. You can find us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Spotify.
Thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll see you in the next episode. สวัสดีค่ะ
สวัสดีครับ